All right. Hi, everybody. Glad you are here. We are talking about modules. Now, we've already said modules are going to be the way that you are going to organize the content for your course. We've also already talked about modules because we've said you're going to set your home page to modules. So we've referenced modules a number of times, but what we want to do now is dig a little bit more into how modules work and how the content within modules are organized. And then the next step will be moving on to making that content, right? So you can see I am here in my US history course and I'm on my home page. And because my home page is set to modules, here we go. All right. So when it comes to modules, let's start at the top. We'll kind of start macro and then we'll move to the micro. Okay. So up at the top here, we have what's called sort of your, whole thing is called your modules index page. Up at the top, we have some options here that are ones that would apply to the whole page. Some are helpful, some you want to stay away from. So this collapse all is helpful. That literally will close up all my modules. And once you get a whole course in there, it does kind of feel like it's getting a little bit unwieldy. I mean, I'm at the point where I'm building unit 13 in my US history course. So that expand and collapse all can be super helpful. View progress, I don't use that very often, and honestly, I won't click on that either because then my student names will become visible. But this is how, especially if you do some progression tracking in your modules, you would see how students are progressing. Publish all, I never use this button. I will use the publish within, when we start going a little bit more micro, we'll talk about publishing by module, and that's where you really want to focus your publishing on. Here is where, when you're ready to add more modules to your module index page, you would use the plus module button. And then commons favorite. So you could actually move this to somewhere where it's shared a little bit more globally by pushing it out into the commons. Okay, so that's these options along the top. Now, the next thing you're going to see, of course, are your modules. And this is where you will manage the progression of your course. You can also use modules to contain or house some just sort of standard information. So I always keep up at the top this module that is the link to my US history textbook. And so you can see this is an external URL. That's one thing you can put into your modules. This also, as you can see, has what are called text headers. So I've reminded them of what the username and password is for their US history textbook. I'm also reminding them what they got to bring to class every day. And so this module is always up at the top for easy access to those reminders and those links. All right. Along this bar here, this header title, if you will, is going to be the name of your module. And I'll scroll up just a little bit so you can see the names of other modules that I have, as well as this is where you're going to worry about publishing your individual modules. I almost never, let me go this route, use publish module and all items. I usually work on publishing things individually, and I'll talk about that in just a second. So if I use this publishing option, it is usually to publish the module only, and then you can worry about, so there's lots of different places. Obviously, you can go to publish from the macro all the way down to the micro. I usually publish at the micro level. So that's just a little bit of a tip there. Talk to your mentor, see if they have any specific tips for your subject. Also along this top bar, this plus sign is where we will add content to our module. I've already shown you a text header. I've also already shown you a URL. That was my US history textbook. So we've already done those two, and I'll show you some of these other ones. So you can start from scratch in this area, or you can add something that already exists that you created using the links in the course navigation. So that's that plus sign. And then again, here are more options that you can do for this entire module. You can edit this. This would allow me to edit the name of the module And if I want to set some requirements for the students, say I want them to progress through the module in a very intentional way, I can set requirements for the module that way. I often manage that based on publishing dates. I've played around with using this with students, and I've found that it can just be a little bit confusing and unnecessary, but just know that that is an option that is there. Okay, I'm going to cancel this because I don't want to set that. You can move the module, assign it, delete it, duplicate it. Duplicating is a really great feature. For example, I have a module template. And so when I want to create a new module, it's pretty simple, but it's nice to just create that once and then duplicate it and then edit it. So that's where you might want to use that feature. You can send a module to a colleague. That's super nice. So if you and a colleague work, kind of lockstep through your curriculum, maybe you have a teaching partner, you might create a module that then you send to them. You can also copy this to another course. So say you have not cross-listed your A days and your B days, you might want to copy that. Okay, so that's everything along that top bar there. The name of it, some a little bit more, macro publishing options, adding elements to it, and then managing the settings for this module. You can also open and close the individual module here. You can also drag and drop to reorder the module there. Okay. And then it's all about adding individual items to your module. What you can see here are all the agendas that I have. These are all pages, and I can tell because that icon is a page icon. That's an assignment icon. That's a quiz icon. Another page icon, another quiz icon. And then as I'm editing from year to year, I've got this things I did not use in this school year that I did use the previous year. So I sort of move those there instead of deleting them because I don't want to, what if I wanted to come back and get it at another point? Okay. A little bit about what we see here. What does this mean? Well, that means I've created that page and I've in advance set it to publish on the day of that lesson. I always set mine to publish the morning of at 7 a.m. It doesn't have to be that way. That's just how I do it. But what's nice is that then that morning, I don't have to think about making sure that content is set to go. Usually in a couple waves, I'll get my module all set up and set to publish. All right. And then you can see I've got my classwork and my homework for the module in here, as well as my review and my assessment. A couple things that you can do, we're kind of getting into the micro here. You can see I've got different levels of indent here. That's controlled using these individual item settings. So I can increase the indent, I can move it, and of course I can edit it as well. I can also move the same way I did the module using that drag and drop element over there on the left-hand side. Items that have been published and have grades attached to them, or again, have student submissions. You can see my publish button is grayed out a little bit. So I cannot unpublish an item that already has student submissions attached to it. Other things you'll see, especially when it comes to assignments, you'll see any due dates you have set for these things. You'll see any points you have attributed to those items. That's a little bit more visible here on more of my assessments that carry point values. You can see point values. I'm attached to those there. Trying to think if there's anything else. Let me look at my notes over here. Anything else I want to make sure we cover on modules? I think that might be it, you guys. Yeah, we covered last thing that I would say, and then we'll wrap up here, is that especially if it's your first time through creating the course, which it's going to be for most of you as new teachers, I often would use this view as student option to make sure that the settings I've got are how I want it to look. All right, so here's that Cold War unit we've been looking at. And so all the days we've covered already are already here and published. I like the way they look. Those ones I have scheduled, they're not visible yet because they haven't been published to the students. I usually put all the classwork and homework out there for them at the start of the unit. Again, that's a personal preference. Talk with your mentor, talk to others in your department. So view as student is I don't know why that's there, that's so old, is a great way to preview things once you think you've got it set up and make sure that you are happy with it. Okay. We will keep playing around in our modules as we go here, because now what we're going to move on to is starting to build this content that's going to be part of our modules, you know, the meat of the course, really. Okay. I think that's probably it. That's sort of, oh, last thing I would say, I keep saying that last thing, is you can see like my first semester, now that I'm done with these modules, I wait until after the first semester is all over, but then I've got the entire first semester unpublished. Their final exam in May will not cover that material. I don't want it to be in the way, so let's just pop back into student view one more time. And you can see as they, and let me go ahead and collapse all. They do have that option too, which is super easy. You can see for them, this started with Unit 7, right? So Unit 7, 8, 9, I can probably unpublish that. We're done with that now. Unit 10, that's what their final exam is going to be all about. And just to show you how might I unpublish that Tournament of Presidents, I'm going to come in here and this is done. So I can unpublish the module and all the items. Oh, that's got submissions. So unfortunately, I can't unpublish that. But because we're done with that, I sort of can remove most of that, at least from view for them. Okay, that is modules. What should you do right now? Be thinking about how you want to organize your course. As you saw on the reading portion of this page, there's lots of different ways to organize. For me, in US history, it makes sense to organize by unit. Others might organize by day, by week, you know, lots of different ways that you, well, probably not lots of different ways, but there are different ways to think about how to organize your modules. There's no right or wrong way. It does need to be organized and it does need to be your main point of entry. And that's kind of your non-negotiables, if you will, right? So start thinking about how you want to organize. Go into your sandbox, practice creating modules. Once we've learned how to make the content, start, you know, organizing and think about how you want that to look so that when your real courses are publicized in mid to late July, you're ready to hit the ground running and start building that course. Okay, that's it. Any questions? Let me know.